Good, yeah, so let's get going. It's perhaps one of our greatest and also one of the most common human challenges to try and find the gift in what we sometimes perceive to be overwhelming adversity. So we are so lucky tonight to have three awesome women who are willing to share their stories of what they discovered about life, themselves, and relationships with others when they did just that. So let's get going. All right, first up, in another life, our next speaker produced radio, wrote communication strategies for crisis and public affairs clients, and advanced politicians and authors. Today, she's a mom, business owner, part-time bookseller, and full-time volunteer. She is also the president of the Downers Grove Public Library Foundation. She'll share with us why she wrestles with saying yes to hard things and no to secondary gains, and why a brain aneurysm is the hidden reason and also a gift. Please give a warm welcome to Genene Murphy.
So I have to figure out what I'm doing here first. I'm gonna take a deep breath. So Cindy, does this, like,
Oh, right, you wanted to.
how does this work?
Yeah, it's kind of wonky.
Oh.
Look at that, and then the font
I
got
love
larger.
that. Oh, yay, this is perfect for me. So what I need to do now is track these pictures I'm going to show you and also try to read from the screen. And when you hear me talk, you're going to understand why this is sometimes difficult. So I'll be taking some deep breaths, and you can take those with me if you'd like. But I want to thank all of you for coming tonight. I say this often. I look at the faces in this room, and in the Venn diagram of my life, you're all there. Like, I see Carol there, and Yvonne, and I see my friend Amy, who flew in from California, and Nancy. And it boggles my mind that none of you know each other already. And this is how I work here in Downers Grove. So when Dale asked to meet with me, I had no idea who she was. Can you hear me back there? You're good, Heather? And so I thought, well, all right, I'll meet a stranger, and I will meet her just like this. So when she asked what makes me tick, if I'd share it with all of you, I hesitated a hot second. I mean, a really long, hot second. I've worked bits and parts of what you're about to hear in conversation with friends, but mostly inside my head. It's a story I tell myself. You have those, right? You have those stories? I smile, though, because I don't particularly invite this story. I'm looking at my meditation teacher right back there, and she knows what I'm talking about, because at meditation, it just shows up more often, again and again. So instead of pushing it away, I've learned to acknowledge its presence and say, yeah, I see you there. Come on in. It's a reluctant welcome, though, because sometimes I wrestle with the truth of why it shows up at all. So I told Dale, if I say yes to showing up here tonight, I'm going to have to show up as I am, because I don't have time or energy to be anything else. And I told her I might wear this hat. Did you expect that? That I told you I'm going to wear my hat?
I almost wore a hat, but then I thought the joke was bad.
Thank you. But here's the funny thing. When I told someone who works in communications this part of the story, she said, oh my God, don't do that, you'll be judged. And I laughed because I knew she was right about the hat. But then I immediately and silently questioned all the words I wrote that she had no idea that I was writing. See, here's the thing. For me to say yes, sharing what wakes me at 3 a.m, or breathless in a car line, waiting for kids I didn't know were possible, I had to say no to my anxiety about it, what I'd wear, like this turtleneck, or do I wear my non-chemical deodorant? Because I'm telling you right now, I went out and bought Dove right before I came in. I worried what you think and how I might be judged. But at best, I thought I'd give this story a voice, to hear how it sounds, to see what it says, to let it fly, or just maybe let it go. So what you don't see is I've written some things in here that says deep breath. 25 years ago, I was standing on a dock oh, you can hear me now, beside a boat with 8 seats. It looks like this. It's called an 8. And it was filled with people getting ready to row. I was throwing up into muddy water. But in the same breath, I'm certain that I was reassuring the crew that I coached that I would be fine. Maybe I had the flu. I didn't know, but I'd be fine. And they believed me. Denial is a useful tool. What I didn't tell them is that feeling like I might be dead or that I was dying was increasingly normal. At the time, I was a junior at DePaul University. A few weeks later, home for Mother's Day weekend, I went to a bar in Indianapolis with friends, kind of like your kids. And I met a law student. I remember thinking he was adorable, and we had a lot in common. I planned to pursue that route, being a lawyer, that is. And it was closing time, and I remember he asked if I wanted another beer. I remember saying no, and I said it out loud, that I had a headache. The next morning, I woke in my parents' home with double vision. My left eye skated to the left side of my socket, untethered and apparently stuck. I don't remember looking in the mirror and thinking, yeah, something's wrong here. Most of you might, but I don't remember that part. But I do remember looking at the face of my optometrist who said I needed to go to the ER immediately. That's when I thought, this might be the beginning of something that happens to other people. Mostly, I remember wearing this, blue Umbro shirts and a fraternity t-shirt that said 1 fish, 2 fish, blue fish. And I remember that because a neurosurgeon also said he saw a series of brain tumors, like a string of popcorn, and tests would reveal more. I remember my mom wasn't in the room. She couldn't be. She lost 2 children before. I was, and still am, her only child. A nurse I don't remember, and when I was writing this, I was thinking about it. It might be Kathy. Let's call her Kathy. She was holding my hand while my dad was hearing something abnormal was happening. A giant brain aneurysm severed my optic nerve and might burst right then and there. So I was looking at the world through a prism of things gone wrong, quite literally. I was told it would be permanent if surgery was successful. So word got out, prayer circles were organized, and calendars were cleared. And in my hospital room that night, I remember seeing pictures of friends taped to the wall. Someone delivered a Van Morrison mixtape with a Walkman, and I fell asleep listening to Into the Mystic. But you guys, I have never known a better night of sleep. 10 hours of surgery, and God only knows. I remember thinking, if I can think this thought, I must be alive. When you attend a liberal arts school and you take philosophy classes, this is what you do. And I thought, I made it. There's a connection for me. And then at that moment, I went to bed and I slept for a really long time. I later learned I was living with a clipped carotid artery through which no blood would flow again. I couldn't even open my eye. Years later, while running a half marathon, a doctor would stop and ask if I was okay. And then I have to explain that the left side of my face is pale white and the right side of my face is bright red. And that's because I have a clipped artery. And then I'd have to ask to finish the race because I'm racing and I don't have time to be stopped by a doctor to see if I'm okay. Because for the love, let it be okay. Just let me finish. Anyway, in those months following brain surgery, I needed to feel like a person in the world again. It's a long story, but I lived in Ireland for a short time, and I drank a lot of beer. This is the funny part. See these pictures? There's one of me really drunk at a bar, and I really honestly thought about putting it here. But instead, this is me in Ireland waving at a camera, and you can see these baggy jeans. You can see my hair is over my eye because I couldn't open my eye. So I looked drunk most of the time. It was great. I drank a lot of beer because I could. At the time, I didn't know how that experience would change my life. I just knew there was a before and there was an after. Do some of you know that? So when I returned to reality, I enrolled in my last year of college against the wisdom of many. I wore an eye patch. I took meds to avoid seizures. You guys, I got a C in a walking class. I slept the second half of Ken Bodie's media and politics class because he let me. He knew it was my luxury. My GPA dropped to high honors. I didn't go to law school. My lawyer friends say it's a blessing because who knows? I might have died of a stroke anyway, sharpening my brand of perfectionism. See, there are silver linings everywhere. You have those too, right? You have that? Friends, feeling just as helpless, signed me up for an interview to work at a high-profile guest ranch in Wyoming. That was the summer after graduation. I had nothing to lose, so I showed up. The ranch people hired me, and a few months later, I drove west by myself because I insisted, with one eye open. Little did I know that's where I'd find solace, in the middle of mountains, by a river, 40 minutes from the nearest grocery, hours away from the nearest hospital. And it's where I met one of my closest friends. So this is the part where it gets kind of weird. I wrote this weeks ago, but she happened to fly in tonight to be here in this room. And that's where I also discovered a part of me that I didn't know was possible, much like her being here tonight. If it weren't for that damn aneurysm, I'm not sure I would have said yes to adventure at all. And I continued saying yes to more of it, like moving to Chicago. There, I managed events for a museum and worked for a bookstore for rent and health insurance. I produced for WBEZ and WGN. I worked for a Swiss consulate for a brief period of time. I managed crisis clients for a public affairs firm. I advanced politicians. I wrote communication strategies and talking points for very important people. I worked 3 jobs at the same time for 3 years, in part because I didn't want to go home. I wanted to prove that I could survive. You know, beat the odds, do the impossible, be normal. And I got really good at pushing boundaries until I couldn't. For example, in 2000, I advanced important people in Washington, D.C. I lost a lot of weight doing it. I wasn't sure why, but I looked really good in my Ann Taylor suit. It was the only one I owned. And after working 12-hour days in a fancy hotel, I woke one morning to the news that the USS Cole was bombed. That meant that there wouldn't be an international transportation summit in the conference rooms below me. There would be no White House briefings. Our keynote was on a plane already halfway overseas. All that work, all the preparation, all that energy, and nothing to show for it. So I returned to Chicago relieved. Looking back, I must have known something was wrong, but I sure as hell wasn't going to say anything. Weeks later, I advanced to presidential candidate. And it's not Bill Clinton, even though this says Bill Clinton. When I returned home, I stepped out of the cab and threw up unexpectedly on the curb outside my apartment. I barely missed my luggage. And I remembered that because that was the only luggage I owned. How do you replace luggage that you've thrown up on? That kind of throwing up happened again and again, kind of like when I was living with that aneurysm many years ago and ignored all the signs. I didn't even unpack my bags, but I did call my doctor. She took tests, called a cab, and arranged for a friend to meet me at the University of Chicago, where doctors waited for me. I played it cool. I told her it was a precautionary thing. No, seriously, my pupil dilates like this all the time, totally normal. A resident inserted an IV into my left hand while I handed my Franklin Covey to her in my right hand. I told her to call my parents. I was wheeled away for an angiogram I knew would happen and left her with worry and client contacts, but not one from my parents. But there's good news, you guys. I didn't go to surgery. Instead, I had mono, again. It wasn't the first time I've known it. I mean, Mono and I were friends, but I knew I'd need to make decisions about it sooner than later, my health. Days later, on November 4th, remember that election? I ignored doctor's orders and went to the office to watch returns. I felt the air being sucked out of the room when all eyes turned to Florida. and I just knew. I asked my friend to drive me home, and I threw up again. But here's something else you might know. About a job I said yes to and got really good at doing. Let me look up my... So before I move on, when I was in the hospital, they took these scans. This is part of my brain, and there are these little wire clips in there. Can you see those? I don't even understand what's going on in that picture. I just know that was the first time I was able to see what's in my head. And I was really grateful to also see there wasn't an aneurysm. So here's the other job I got really good at doing, and some of you know me best from these stories. So I'd meet authors at O'Hare at stupid early hours, and then drive to 3 or 4 schools on tightly scripted schedules coordinated by publicists who have never driven Chicago traffic. I'd return home to my family exhilarated and exhausted and wake to do it again. I also had to keep my car clean. And that's a whole other thing, because if you know me well, you can only imagine. It was super stressful. And I did that for 10 years until recently. Hey, did I mention that a car accident was the reason why I had a brain aneurysm in the first place? That I see double vision all the time? That my peripheral vision is almost non-existent? And that it's exhausting, this business of being able to see or be seen? I laugh at it even now because it's taken me a while to come to terms with it. For example, when Dale asked for a recent headshot of me not wearing sunglasses or a hat, I looked, but I couldn't find one I liked. None of the headshotty pictures looked like me. It didn't feel right. But that headshot that you see, maybe in your email and here right now, of me wearing sunglasses, climbing a mountain off a highway in San Diego, because it was there, that's who I am. And I'm grateful to see double vision, even now, looking at you, looking at me. But when I'm stressed, sick, or tired, and this is an important part, when the light catches me in the right way, I can't see anymore. I'm overexposed. And this is the best part. When I came here tonight, there's this bright light right here, and it works perfectly for my talk, right? Because if it weren't here, I wouldn't have to wear the hat. But honestly, I'm so grateful it is because it works. But you may not always notice a double vision because my brain works really hard not to show it. It compensates. It does things I wouldn't know to ask, like balance my depth perception so I don't fall off curbs or fall into this podium. And I love that it does it at all. It's easy to take for granted. But because I'm getting older, my brain doesn't do it as fast as it used to, or as fast as I'd like. If I don't protect my eyes and pretend it'll all be okay, my brain will then cue me with unexplained weirdness. I mean, even now, my eye is twitching. It's like a kick in the ass. You may not see it, but I know it. And it just shows up more often these days. But I reluctantly welcome that too, because my brain is trying to tell me something. It's telling me to slow down. It's begging me to pay attention because my life depends on it. And that's why I wear this hat, so I can live. And sure, I've asked if it's a way to hide behind my fears and I'm not good enough. And some days, yeah, I'm an introvert. And maybe you've seen me on those days at Trader Joe's, the library, Target. Some of you only know me wearing this hat. Mostly though, I wear this hat so I can see my life more clearly and the people and the things in it that make it worth living. By the way, I should mention, no one compliments an eye patch, but everyone loves the Boston Red Sox. So this is a secondary game I welcome. But I didn't realize until recently the anxiety of it all, the keeping it together, the proving that I am enough, that my life is enough. Remember the woman who said, "Oh God, don't do that, you'll be judged," about my wearing this hat tonight? She was right about all my fears. And it's deeper than that. For example, my doctors say but don't entirely. Something like this. Because you risk a stroke, comma, don't scuba dive. Because you risk a stroke, comma, don't lift more than 10 pounds. And I hear myself saying things to my daughter like, be sure you buy a good pair of jeans, or be sure you buy a good bra, and always ask for a raise. Sometimes she looks at me like, what the hell? She's 12. But what I mean to say, but don't entirely, is this. If I die tomorrow, comma, buy a good pair of jeans. If I die tomorrow, comma, buy a good bra. Always ask for a raise. The older I get, the more I think about it, these unsaid things. I'm reminded of Hamilton lyrics. I imagine death so much it feels like a memory. Is this where it gets me? On my feet, several feet ahead of me. I see it coming. Do I run or fire my gun or let it be? In a week with this twitching eye and weird numbness in my left toe and migraines that demand cold and dark quiet, I'll celebrate 47 years on this earth. And it's a gift, knowing this deeper level of gratitude for uncontrollable things that happen. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? It doesn't mean it gets any easier, finding gratitude in hard days and hard things, but at least it's still a choice. Mostly I've learned to take a deep breath and know it's going to be okay. Even if I have to sit with things for a bit to know the difference between crisis and calm, the then and the now. So when I get a migraine these days, I'm a tiny bit grateful for it because I'm not stroking out. I mean, I know you guys know what this means. Do you know what this means? And it's a great way to wake to be present again. Even if my son's playing hot press buns on his cello downstairs and then switches to his recorder. And even if my daughter sings for an hour straight. God bless, she's good. But some of you in this room know how much it makes me crazy. Saying yes to hard things, like living a life of purpose, means saying no to worrying if this is my last day, or weighing the what-ifs, could-ifs, should-haves, volunteering my time and energy to secondary gains like guilt and shame, or holding space for people who'll drain it because they need it and I allow for it. Saying yes to hard things like I am enough means saying no to expectations and judgment, comparisons and perfection, and clutter and chatter, a lot of chatter. And that's why I try hard these days to let my phone die and not care about notifications. Read in the middle of the day, sometimes on top of laundry straight from the dryer. Meditate when I don't feel like it, especially when I don't feel like it. Show up at Weight Watchers, even though I ate 4 cookies the day before. Walk in the woods when it's snowy and cold. And pay attention to the people in my life, like my husband, like my son, like my daughter. Sometimes I watch Arthur with him, my son, despite seeing it 23 times. Sometimes I call my parents to hear their voices. Sometimes I just need to sit with my daughter's anxiety about the world and not judge or fix it. Sometimes I need to ask for help. And maybe I just need to be quiet and forgiving. To be the friend to me that I'd want to be to you. It's not easy. So when I hear how other people discover hidden truths and gifts and how they're figuring out, because none of us are figuring it out, but we try, here's what I've learned to say out loud. Ask if the hardest thing you can do is say yes to saying no. Ask if the opportunity gives you joy. Does it light you up? Does it make your day? Ask if there's a gift in the process and if you can see it through for the right reasons. Because life is short. I am enough. You are enough. We are not alone. I mean, all you have to do is look in this room full of people, every single one of you here, whether you know each other or not, to know that we can be present to our doubts and our fears and say yes to them with love and acceptance, even if it feels so uncertain. So there's a whole lot of, yeah, I see you there, come on in. Sometimes that's the hardest thing to say at all, saying yes to being present and saying no to all the other things that divert and distract and get in the way. So I actually wrote that I'm going to tip my hat, which I just did, but I appreciate you all being in the room because this is saying yes to a hard thing, but because of you, it's made easy. So thank you so much. Thank you, Dale. Thank you so much. This part was over and I was super grateful. I was like, oh, I'm gonna sit down now, but it's so not over. Where do you need me to move this right there? Okay.
Okay, we're gonna have a little Q&A, and Cindy has a microphone, so she's gonna walk around. But I want to address too the fact that thank you for saying yes to talking to me, because I literally had 3 people in the course of 1 week say, do you know Genene Murphy? You should really know Genene Murphy. And I definitely pay attention to multiple occurrences. And when you said that, I thought, I don't say a challenge, but you all heard this idea, so it's okay to do with one another. Wouldn't it be great to just someone you don't know say, you know what? She looks like a cool, interesting person. I'm gonna call her, I'm gonna go up to her. So, I don't know. I think it would be fun because I really enjoy being able to do that with people, hearing about an interesting person and being able to call them and get together.
But we had an interesting moment, right?
I'm a little sick. Tell me what it was.
So we were at Pete's,
Yeah.
and I showed up in my hat, and I told Dale, sometimes you have difficult people in your life, and there was a woman there that I don't think a whole lot of people hold space for her. Right? And I told her, I think when she walks by, we're going to say hello together. And you know what the strangest thing is? I knew her, and so did Dale, from different ways. And here's this woman that this community may not love as much, but here we were being able to hold a little space for her. And it was because of you, right? We had that discussion.
Oh, that came up.
Yeah. So sometimes these things happen spontaneously, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Does anyone have a question for Genene? Oh, Carol?
What did the doctor say about you getting pregnant and having children after you went through all this?
So Carol, doctors are funny. They have large malpractice insurance, right? So the best thing I can say is what my neurologist here, she's in Hinsdale, tells me. She says, don't worry about it. Because she doesn't want to give me all the risk that if you try, you might stroke out. If you try, you might die right there. You might risk another aneurysm. And I think sometimes doctors, even though they're thinking about malpractice, are also thinking about the quality of life, right? I didn't really want to hear I couldn't have kids. So I did. Not only did I have one, I had 2. And they were both C-sections because I could not push, because I would risk another aneurysm in my head. So it really is kind of a miracle that that happened. I'm super grateful for drugs. But even now, my doctors, when I ask them, and I do, am I going to stroke out? What is the status of my veins? They're not in great shape. They don't answer me. They just basically said, live your life. And I'm grateful for that.
Genene is a writer, and you can probably tell from her story. And that was another great synchronicity because you said that you'd been wanting to write this story. and tell this story. So it was great the way that came together too. And I have to say that I love metaphors, and I think your gift of double vision, as you said, that you're able to see both sides, the good and the hard. So I think that is a blessing.
Thank you.
So anybody else? Okay. Oh,
Well, I don't have a question, and only because I know Genene, but you said you were feeling like you had the flu, but then you ended up with the aneurysm, and Dale just said that she feels like she has the flu.
Thank you.
which is why she was going to call the ambulance.
So this is my friend Jenny McKendall, and I just love her. And it's funny, when I arrived here, my whole talk is about denial's a useful tool, right? Like, there are signs and cues and warning systems, and it's so easy to say, I'm totally fine, I've got this. So Dale's not feeling that great, but I'm like, what's the best way to provide comfort here? You're totally cool, lay down, or can I call you an ambulance? So you walk a fine line, because as I'm thinking all the time, is this it? Is this migraine the last thing I'll remember? What if I trip on a step because I don't see it and hit my head? Is that it? I'm also thinking, Dale, is this it? So it's a fine line between noticing things in the world around you and also providing comfort by just being present instead of always noticing. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're okay.
I got some nice Reiki from Heidi and from Gail Ann, so I'm sure that helped. So thank you so much, Genene. You can sit down now.
Thank you so much.
I have one question. Is anybody cold, or is it just me? You're cold? It is a little bit cold? We'll try